Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
You've spent your whole life making sure everyone else was okay. And somewhere along the way, so quietly you didn't even notice, you stopped asking whether you were. That's the thing nobody talks about, isn't it? It doesn't happen all at once. It's not one dramatic moment where you hand yourself over and watch yourself walk away. It's slower than that. It's 1,000 small surrenders. It's saying, no, I'm fine, when you weren't. It's shrinking in a room so someone else could feel bigger. It's swallowing your opinion at the dinner table, your frustration in the car, your grief in the bathroom with the door locked, and doing it so many times that the swallowing started to feel like breathing. Natural. Necessary. Just what you do. And now maybe it's 4 a.m, or maybe it's the middle of a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. Something has cracked open just a little, and you're sitting with this quiet, almost unbearable realization: when did I stop mattering to myself? I want to stay right here with you for a moment, because that question, that tiny, devastating question, is not a symptom of weakness. It is the first honest thing you may have let yourself feel in years. Here's what I've come to believe. After years of sitting with women in their most unguarded moments, in their most sacred and shattered places, the wound beneath almost everything is this one. Not fear of failure, not loneliness, not even grief, though grief dresses it up sometimes. The deepest wound is the belief, buried so far down it's become invisible, that your worth was never really yours to begin with, that it was something you had to earn, that it lived in other people's approval, in how useful you were, in how little you asked for, in how gracefully you managed everyone else's storms while quietly drowning in your own. You learned this somewhere. Don't be too hard on yourself about that. Most of us did. Maybe you learned it from a mother who loved you but never saw you, who praised you when you were helpful and went silent when you had needs. Maybe you learned it from a marriage that slowly convinced you that your instincts were wrong, your feelings were too much, your desires were inconvenient. Maybe you learned it from a culture that spent decades telling women like you to be good, to be giving, to be grateful, and confused all of that selflessness with virtue, with worthiness, with love. But here's the quiet whisper I need you to sit with today. Those were lessons. They were not truths. Self-worth, real self-worth, not the kind that depends on your productivity or your pleasantness or how many people need you. It doesn't come from doing. It doesn't come from earning. It doesn't come from finally being seen by the person who spent years looking right through you. It comes from within. And I know that sounds simple, almost painfully simple, but the reason we resist it, the reason it feels almost arrogant to claim our own worth without justification, is because we were taught, slowly, systematically, that the inner world wasn't a place of authority, that feelings were suspect, that needing was weakness, that asking was burden, so we outsourced it. We let our worth live in our children's gratitude, in our partner's moods, in our boss's approval, in whether the house was clean and the meal was warm and everyone around us was comfortable. We made ourselves the sanctuary for everyone else and left ourselves standing in the rain. And you are tired, aren't you? Not just physically tired, though that too, but tired in your bones. Tired of managing, tired of monitoring, tired of being the one who keeps it all together while no one wonders how you're holding up. Tired of performing okayness when you're anything but. That tiredness is not failure. That tiredness is your soul speaking the only language you left it. It's saying, I deserve to come home to myself. And I believe you do. Let's go back. Not to punish ourselves, we're done with that. But because you can't untangle a knot you refuse to look at. Think about the first time you made yourself smaller for someone else's comfort. Really think? You probably weren't 40. You weren't 30. You were young, maybe very young, and someone whose love felt like oxygen to you sent you a message, not always in words, that your full self was too much, too loud, too sensitive, too needy, too something, and you, being the intelligent, beautifully adaptive human being you were, did what children do. You adjusted, you filed down the edges. You learned which version of yourself got the warmth, and which version got the silence. And you chose warmth. Of course you did. We all do. That's not weakness, that was survival. But here's what nobody told you: the coping strategy you built at 7 or 12 or 16, the one that protected you then, didn't retire when you grew up. It followed you. Into your friendships, into your marriage, into the way you raise your children, into the way you speak to yourself at night when no one's listening. That voice in your head that says, don't ask for too much, don't take up too much space, don't expect too much. That isn't wisdom. That's an old wound that learned to speak. There's a particular kind of woman I want to speak to right now. She's generous to a fault, and she knows it somewhere. She's the one who remembers everyone's birthday, but can't remember the last time someone asked her what she wanted for hers. She volunteers before she's asked. She apologizes when she's wronged. She shrinks her dreams down to a size that feels less threatening, less greedy, less visible. She is capable of extraordinary love. And she has never quite learned to turn it toward herself. Maybe that woman is you. Maybe she's been you for so long that you can't tell where the role ends and you begin. That's one of the cruelest aspects of this particular wound. It's self-concealing. When your worth is built on being needed, you need to be needed. When your identity is wrapped up in caretaking, the idea of stopping feels not like freedom, but like erasure. Who are you if you're not holding someone else up? What's left if you take away the doing and the giving and the managing? That terrifying blankness, that's not emptiness. That's just the quiet you've never let yourself sit in long enough to discover what lies there. And then life has a way of forcing the question, doesn't it? The children grow up and leave. The marriage shifts or ends. Retirement comes, and with it the loss of a role that once told you exactly who you were and why you mattered. A health scare arrives like an unwelcome stranger, and suddenly the body you've been ignoring is demanding your full attention. Or maybe it's subtler than that. Maybe it's just a morning where you look in the mirror and realize you don't recognize the exhaustion looking back at you. That you've been running so hard for so long that you've lost the thread back to yourself. These moments feel like loss. And they are. But they are also, and I want you to hold both of these things at once, invitations. The unraveling isn't the end of you. It's often the first honest beginning. Here's what the research tells us, and what I've watched unfold in the lives of real women again and again. The root of low self-worth is almost never what we think it is. We tell ourselves the story that we're not confident enough, not disciplined enough, not enough in some vague, formless way. But underneath that story is something simpler and sadder. A set of beliefs about our own fundamental lovability that were written by other people, in chapters of our lives when we had no pen to write back with. Those beliefs hardwired themselves. They became the background hum, the operating system running beneath everything else. And here is the most important thing I can tell you about an operating system: it can be rewritten. Not overnight, not without grief, not without the discomfort of meeting yourself again after so many years of looking away. But it can be rewritten. You are not too old. You are not too far gone. You are not too anything. You are, perhaps for the first time in a very long time, ready. So what does it actually look like? This coming back to yourself. Because I think we've been sold a version of healing that doesn't quite fit. The montages, the breakthrough moments, the sudden epiphany on a yoga mat at sunrise where everything clicks into place and you emerge transformed, glowing, finally fixed. And if your healing doesn't look like that, if it's messier, slower, less photogenic, you start to wonder if you're doing it wrong. You're not doing it wrong. You're just doing it real. Real healing doesn't usually arrive with a soundtrack. It arrives in the ordinary moments, almost sideways. It's the morning you wake up and instead of immediately cataloging everyone else's needs, you lie still for 30 extra seconds and ask yourself, how am I? And you actually wait for an answer. It's the afternoon you say no to something, not with an elaborate excuse, just no, I can't do that. And the guilt comes, as it always does, but this time you don't let it make the decision. It's the evening you look at your reflection and choose, consciously and deliberately, not to say something unkind to the woman looking back at you. Small, quiet, unglamorous, and absolutely revolutionary. The turning begins with one thing, and it's harder than it sounds. You have to start treating yourself like someone who matters. Not someone who will matter once you've earned it. Not someone who matters to others, though you do, profoundly, but someone who matters inherently, unconditionally. Someone whose comfort, whose joy, whose rest whose voice deserves the same tender consideration you have spent decades lavishing on everyone else in your life. This will feel selfish. I want to name that directly because that feeling is going to show up the moment you start, and it's going to be loud. The inner critic, that old, inherited voice. It doesn't go quietly. It has years of practice. It knows exactly which words land hardest. Who do you think you are, after everything they've done for you? You're being so self-centered. Here's what I want you to say back, quietly, firmly, as many times as necessary. Taking care of myself is not a betrayal of the people I love. It is what makes me capable of loving them. Because here's the unspoken truth about women who run on empty: they don't give from abundance. They give from depletion, and giving from depletion, that particular flavor of martyrdom we've all tasted. It doesn't feel like love after a while. It feels like resentment wearing love's clothing. It shows up as short tempers and swallowed tears and the cold, creeping loneliness of being surrounded by people who need you but don't truly know you. You deserve to be known. Now, let's talk about what the healing actually asks of you, practically, tenderly, honestly. It asks you to grieve. And I don't say that lightly. There is real grief in this work. Grief for the years spent waiting for someone else to see your worth before you claimed it yourself. Grief for the younger version of you who deserved to be told you are enough, exactly as you are, and wasn't. Let yourself feel that. Don't rush past it. Grief isn't weakness. It's the price of having loved, even imperfectly, even misguidedly, even yourself. It asks you to get curious instead of critical. When you notice yourself shrinking, and you will notice it now because awareness is already shifting, don't attack yourself for it. Get curious. Oh, interesting. I just apologized for having an opinion. Why did I do that? What was I afraid of? Curiosity creates space. Criticism collapses it. It asks you to build what I call a sanctuary within. Not a place, a practice. A daily, gentle, non-negotiable turning toward yourself. 5 minutes in the morning before the world pours in. A walk where you're not solving anything for anyone. A journal page where you're allowed to be honest without managing anyone's reaction to your honesty. A single question asked with genuine tenderness. What do I need today? And then, this is the part we almost always skip, actually listening to the answer. The women I've watched do this work, real women, imperfect and brave and often terrified, they don't transform into different people. They transform into more of themselves. The self that was always there, underneath the accommodation and the armor and the endless, exhausting performance of okayness. She was never gone. She was just waiting for you to come looking. And you are here now. You are looking. That's not a small thing. That is everything. We've traveled a long way together in this conversation. And I want to honor that because you didn't have to stay. You could have clicked away at any point, gone back to the comfortable numbness of business, told yourself you'd think about all this later, but you stayed. And that matters more than you know. Staying is an act of self-worth, even when it doesn't feel like one yet. So here we are. The part where I'm supposed to tie it all together, give you the tidy list, send you off with a plan. And I'm not going to do that. Not because there's nothing practical left to say, but because I think you've had enough lists. Enough plans that began on Monday and quietly dissolved by Thursday. Enough strategies that addressed the surface while the deeper thing went untouched. What I want to offer you instead is something older and quieter than a plan. I want to offer you a promise. And then I want to ask you to make one. Here is mine to you. The work you're beginning, this slow, tender, sometimes excruciating reclamation of your own worth. It will not be linear. There will be days when you feel it fully, when you move through the world with a kind of quiet dignity that surprises even you. And there will be days when the old voice comes back louder than ever, when you find yourself apologizing for your existence before you've even finished a sentence, when the familiar pull towards smallness is so strong you don't even realize you've surrendered to it until you're lying in bed that night wondering what happened. That is not failure. That is the nature of deep change. A tree doesn't grow straight every day. It responds to wind, to drought, to the angle of the light. And still, it grows. Year by year, ring by ring, quietly and without fanfare, it becomes more fully itself. You are allowed to be a tree. Now, here is what I want you to carry from this conversation, not as a checklist, but as a way of being. Carry this: your worth is not a reward. It was never something to be granted by the right relationship, the right achievement, the right number on the scale, or in the bank account, or in the comment section. It was yours at birth, original, unconditional, complete. Everything that told you otherwise was wrong. Beautifully, tragically, understandably wrong. And you are allowed to correct the record. Carry this: the relationships in your life will not fall apart because you start honoring yourself. The ones worth keeping will actually deepen because you'll finally be present in them as yourself, not as a carefully managed performance of yourself. And the ones that only worked because you made yourself small, those will shift. Some may not survive, and that loss will hurt. But a connection that requires your diminishment was never really nourishing you. It was consuming you. Carry this: healing happens in the body too. Notice when you hold your breath in someone else's presence. Notice when your shoulders climb toward your ears, when your jaw tightens, when your stomach clenches before you speak. Your body has been keeping score long before your mind caught up. Learn to listen to it. It has been trying to tell you something true for years. And carry this: perhaps above everything else, you are not starting over. You are starting from here. From 50, 5 or 60, 2 or 70, 1 years of a life that has given you more wisdom than you've given yourself credit for. The losses you've survived, the love you've given, the impossible things you have quietly, stubbornly held together. None of that disappears when you decide to add yourself to the list of people you care for. It all becomes the foundation. Now the promise I'm asking of you, not a grand declaration, not a complete overhaul of your life by next week, just this one small, specific, unambiguous act of self-worth before this day is over. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding, the one where you finally say what you actually feel. Maybe it's rest you've been refusing yourself, telling yourself you haven't earned it yet. Maybe it's standing in front of a mirror and really finding, one thing you respect about the woman looking back at you. Whatever it is, do it today. Not because everything will change from that single moment, but because that single moment will tell a part of you that has been waiting a very long time. I see you. I'm here. And I'm not leaving you again. You have spent enough years being everything to everyone. It is not selfish to finally be something to yourself. It is, perhaps, the most courageous thing you will ever do, and you are ready. You have always been ready. You just needed someone to remind you.